Chestnuts, acorns, apples, all great deer food. And, you know, the title of this is Best Food for Deer. You probably came because it was titled Apples, Acorns, Chestnuts for Deer, whatever the title you see here. And I want to talk about each one of those, how they're important and why they're important, where you might even plant them or manage them. But really in the whole relationship of thing, what is the best deer food that you can have? And one of these things, it kind of, I've seen advertisements for acorns, types of oaks, also apple trees. Even talk about persimmons, which are great in some locations, and then of course chestnuts. And I'll even see, like on private land, you don't need food plots because you have chestnut trees, and that couldn't be further from the truth. It's very misleading advertising, and I like to call that out because bottom line, I want to help you. I'm not sponsored by any of these things to push you one way or the other. I just want to give you good information, because when I go to a client property, I don't care what it is. If it helps a client, I'm going to recommend it. Period. I get paid to be right. Dylan gets paid to be right. We don't get paid to give you an opinion of what we think is good because it worked in one limited property somewhere, and then we just apply that to every state we work in. I've worked in at least 26 states at this point, and Dylan went to his first property in 2016, and the amount of properties he's gone to has been exponential. So last year you might have been on 70, 80 different days. This year you'll be about the same number of days, like client days in the woods, in the field. And how many states now do you think you've worked in just in the last, since that time?
Come back to this, because I got to add it up in my head.
So, you add it up, but I know it's got to be at least 10. And maybe, how about you make a list? That'll be your job when you're sitting. Normally Dylan just sits there and takes a nap. He occasionally looks and will let me know, hey, we need to back up. The mic's not working. And so 10 minutes of footage, I have to go back.
That hasn't happened in a long time.
And honestly, we've shot close to, I bet you with web class, we've shot over 900 videos. But honestly, I can remember that happening. I don't even know if that's happened 5 times. So literally 5 times. So don't think this is, but I don't think he's dozed off more than 100 times. So let's continue. But each one of these has their place. So even though you can't build a deer herd on these, don't let anyone tell you that they can, because you're going to be sorely mistaken. But they each have their place, and that doesn't mean that you shouldn't plant them. I love plantings. I recommend plantings often. In fact, you keep quality food with quality food. I don't consider acorns quality food because you can't build a deer herd. They're typically, unless it's this beautiful old white oak, deer aren't going to go out of their way for them. And because you can get something like apple trees or chestnuts to grow a lot more quickly, but they're all great additions to a food plot. And so especially the apples and the chestnuts, because they put out a lot of volume, and you're just complementing quality food that can last all season with quality food that is more temporary in nature. Acorns are a great complement to browse and within your woods, in your bedding area. Again, you can't build a deer herd on there. I had a client this last week. We have a lot of oaks on the property, so we really didn't need much else. But those, I'm there for a reason, and so that kind of tell you they need something else, something's not working. But part of that was because of the reliance on acorns. And it's very seasonal nature. It's not definitive. You can't depend on it from year to year, and you certainly can't build a deer herd on it, because someone else a mile away that has a quality food plot program is going to take those deer from you, and they'll be hitting you the acorns you have on your land during the middle of the night. And if you have deer that are nocturnal and in the middle of the night, then you can't build a deer herd, let alone a great deer hunt. First thing is chestnuts. Chestnuts are great because they provide a lot of volume. I've been on a chestnut farm in southern Ohio where the volume that they had out of the 50 trees that they had was just incredible, the numbers that they gave me as it related to the amount of quality food that they can drop for deer. However, do some research on chestnuts. I see a lot of people planting chestnuts in northern states, Minnesota, Wisconsin, portions of those states, Michigan, upstate New York, and they're dying. If they get exposed to that heavy winter, if they have those cold northwest winds coming in, they die. They just can't withstand. I know Jack Turner from Family Tradition Tree Stands. He's down in southern Michigan. I would guess he's about an hour from Indiana, somewhere in that, Ohio, in that range. I'd have to look at the map to see exactly where, but he's about an hour from the border. He's got chestnuts. He plants a few every year, and they do pretty well. They're blocked from the northwest winds for the most part. They get a lot of southerly exposure, and they've made it. He's been planting them for years. But if you go a couple hours north there, 3 hours north there, it's hard to find chestnut trees that are growing out of the varieties that are being planted because they're not cold hardy. That's one problem. And these chestnut companies, these chestnut tree companies, will sell them to you no matter what. It doesn't matter if you live in an area where they're not going to work. For the most part, most of those companies will sell you chestnuts and sell them in those locations, whether they realize they work or not is probably the case, or just fully know that they won't work in your area. They're happy to take your money. Chestnuts can be very prolific, a lot of pounds per acre, but they're an early dropping nut. What I mean by that is for the majority of the time, they're finished dropping by mid-October. Now, if you do some reading, there's a lot of articles out there that talk about that when the chestnut actually goes through a frost or a freeze, when it melts and when it unthaws, it actually begins to deteriorate to a point where squirrels don't even like them. So this isn't a nut that'll lay on the ground and deer are going to eat in December, typically in the northern region. You can read that for yourself. And I'm not making this stuff up. There's good articles out there about that. There are early dropping and late dropping varieties, but those varieties are great more down south and limited application, meaning Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina, more southerly location, maybe Tennessee, areas that don't experience a heavy frost early like we do in most of the northern states, the northern 15 states, 18 states, whitetail states. So big difference between those two. The bottom line is they're a good early season forage. What does that mean? That means you can't build a deer herd around them. Because if you have a great October with chestnuts, which is about what you're going to get on average, you're not going to have a great November and December. If it's the only food source you have, you can't build a deer herd. You can't hunt a great deer herd. You can't rely on just chestnuts. It's a complement to a good food plot program already on private land and a complement to good healthy browse on public land. So this applies to public and private land right here. So chestnuts can be great. They can be very prolific. They don't need a lot of care. They're very hardy in the right area, and they can provide a great September to October time frame for you when planted correctly, and again located in the right area or right region for them to grow and to give you a sustainable, healthy planting of chestnut trees. Number 2, acorns, white or red. Reds are a little bit more, red oak acorns are a little bit more reliable. They drop a little bit later in the season, and they're not as preferred by deer as white oak acorns. And the white oak acorns drop earlier. So kind of going back to the same thought as the chestnut, they're not necessarily around into November, December that often in most states. And red oaks are around more, but they're not as preferred. It's almost like which one is better. I always see people focus on white oak acorns, but they're not as dependable as far as producing yearly nuts. And then at the same time, they're eaten earlier. I like both. So if you have a property with both, it's great. But make no mistake, you can't build a deer herd on acorns if that's all you have. In fact, a lot of times when people are managing for good oak mass-producing trees, they're doing so at the expense of actually cutting down the browse or killing the browse out, the aspen, the box elder, the quote junk trees that are actually the wildlife trees that deer need to browse on during the daylight in their bedding areas. So I've seen some great stands of oaks where the aspen and undesirables were killed in favor of the oaks. The deer just bed on the neighbors and hit the acorns at night. Very, very bad practice. Again, you can't build a deer herd around them. They're a complement to good browse already. I love the white oak and red oak acorns on the property here in Minnesota. And but if I didn't have them, it wouldn't affect us one way. It's just I like them. I like having them. I think it complements our browse very well. But if we don't have the browse, we don't have a deer herd bedding there. So the browse is critical. You have to have that deer in your bedding area. That's the number one ingredient for deer bedding area we talked about in another video, is actual deer browse. And browse being hardwood regeneration, woody shrub tips, briars, weeds, forages that are in the woods. Those are all forms, and acorns. That's a complement to that browse. Again, you can have browse in a property, produce a great deer herd without oaks. You can't produce a good deer herd on property that's full of oaks, but does not include good browse. And that doesn't matter on public land. Now, public land, that quality food source might be oaks, acorns, and even apple trees. But you have to have that good browse as a complement. Apples. I love apple trees. Like I said, with chestnuts, adding those to food plots, the edge of food plots, so they get full sun, and you're just complementing high quality food with high quality food. Think of a combination of chestnuts and apple trees if you're in that right location. Where I see chestnuts doing well and providing nut is in the area of southern Ohio, southern Indiana, southern Illinois, over into Missouri. I rarely see them in southern Michigan, southern Wisconsin, southern Minnesota. Not saying there aren't good plantings like my friend Jack Turner at Family Traditions in the Charlotte, Michigan area. You know, those he's doing really well with them, but there's some good conditions he had to provide for to make sure that they would grow there, and he's doing a good job with them, not only for 1 or 2 years, but several years. And so that's what I like to report on. Several years worth of experience, not 1 or 2. The apple trees are great. In apple trees, it could be apple trees, persimmons. Persimmons drop for a very long period of time, but persimmons are a southern Indiana, southern Ohio, southern Illinois. They're not typically available in those northern regions. When I was in Ohio this last week, I had 10 clients in 11 days. I saw quite a few persimmon trees on a variety of properties, different parcels, different days. So it's pretty cool to see those. They stand out. It's a small little kind of square bark, dark tree. It sticks out from any other tree. It's almost like cherry, but cherry's flaked out and the bark is a little bit larger. But it's like that color, and it's deep. You can see those cuts and grooves, and they're flat to the tree. It's pretty cool when you do see it and you recognize them. The bottom line is apples. Could be pears, crab apples, persimmons, all that soft mast is a great complement to a food plot program. So is chestnut trees right along the borders of the food plot. And the reason is you don't want those quality food sources. If they're there, you keep them, of course, but you don't want them in your bedding areas, because if you had a lot of apple trees, a lot of persimmon trees in your bedding areas, then why do those deer need to leave to go find quality food and to establish that defined movement that you're trying to hunt? Meaning deer in their bedding areas in the morning, traveling to quality food in the afternoon, evening, hitting food plots on private land, and then big clear cuts, stands of acorns, whatever it might be during the timing on public land that they're feeding on at the moment. And so if they're not moving, you can't have morning stands, evening stands. Where are they? It's all jumbled around. And so that's when it creates tough hunting for you. And a lot of times that's why on public land people do pretty well hunting, because you just have to go find the good food source of the moment and the good bedding area that relates to that food source. And now you have an assemblage of stands. You know where to hunt in the morning, where to hunt in the evening. When people try to install all those features on private land is when it messes up. That's when movements become random and hard to define, hard to predict. And so think of that and where they should be planted with evening food sources, bedding areas. Again, oaks and bedding areas are great. They're a complement to good cover, but not the cover and browse themselves. Number 4, browse. We already discussed this. You have to have browse. That is the number 1 deer bedding ingredient. You can have a great property with browse, meaning woody shrub tips, hard to regen, briars, forbs, forages, weeds. You can have a great property with just that. Think about an early successional upland property, upland growth. You can have that, and you don't need any of these chestnuts, acorns, apples on that property. And you can still have a great hunt, have a quality herd if you have food plots. You have to have food plots on private land. If someone's telling you, oh, you just have to practice TSI, timber stand improvement, plant some of these up here, you are going to be sorely mistaken when someone down the road offers a good food plot program and you can install that in 1 year, 1 growing season. We did it here in Minnesota. Changed the course of this land for the time we own it by putting and installing in a quality food plot program right off the bat, because they didn't have a quality food plot program before. They had 5 acres of beans. They were down to the dirt in October. That just wasn't enough food, and it was the wrong food, wrong timing for the land. So we're not planting any beans. If I thought it would work and it was better, you can be darn sure that I would plant beans on the property, because again, we want to get results. We want to get results for not only our clients, but for ourselves. But food plots are critical. You have to have good browse and good food plots. That's feedings 1, 2, 3 on private land. That's your daylight feedings. There's 2 feedings after dark. If you control those 3 feedings, you can't have food plots without good browse. You can't have good browse without good food plots. The 2 go together on private land. On the other hand, you have to have browse on public land, and any of these others is a great complement to that. And that's what can, really push that movement on public land. So big difference. These right here, obviously you don't have food plots. And if you do have food plots on public land, a lot of times they're so over hunted, the bucks are pushed so far back that it's more cool to say there's food plots on public land, but in most situations, it's an overhunted, highly pressured location that, cool to say you have them, but it's not really increasing the quality of the herd that much or the quality of the hunt. And Dylan, okay, we talked about, I've worked in about 26 different states. What'd you count up? I saw you counting and adding and subtracting.
If all my trips come together this year, I will be at 25 states. So I'm at
25
17
states
right now, and I could potentially add another 8 this year. So pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Heck yeah, love it.
You're gonna pass me pretty soon.
I'm hoping so.
I stopped flying to clients for the most part, so you can have at it.
Let's go. All right.
But well, that's pretty cool. And I think, you know, we mentioned it before, we are about 98% sure we're adding Kevin Smith. He's retiring Major League Baseball catcher. Actually has a World Series ring with the Braves from last year. He went to the World Series with the Rays the year before. He's backup catcher, starting catcher. He was in the league for a long time. He's 33, retiring, and this is what he wants to do, is be a part of WHS and go out there. He's going to be handling Ohio and Pennsylvania for us. I'll also be going to clients in Ohio and Dylan and portions of Pennsylvania, and so will Dylan, but we have a lot of clients and we want to help more people. He's going to be a part of that. So I don't know how many states Kevin will work in the next few years, but I know he'll be going to some fly-ins to begin with too. He'll be handling other states for us. And then Dylan will be hitting 25 by the end of this year. And I know there's a few that you've been to, I haven't been to.
Sure.
So Maine. Mm-hmm. If you worked in Maine?
I've been to Maine.
Yeah.
Sure have.
And Louisiana yet?
Have not been to Louisiana yet. Nope. Alabama, but not Louisiana.
Yeah, in Alabama I have not worked in. I've hunted in. So that's another one. Cool. I have not worked in Georgia. You've worked in Georgia? Yeah, so it's funny. We have together between Dylan and I, I'm sure we worked in 30 states. But yeah. So anyways, if you see me, we're always drinking coffee. I'm going to mention this a lot coming up, but we are developing our own coffee brand. And that's something that'll be shipped by a roaster within a couple days of order. In Coffee of the Month Club, we're developing a medium roast for whitetail. It's actually from 2 different countries. It's a blend. So we've tried that and we've been testing coffee. It's kind of fun. And bottom line, it's cool to have your name on the bag. And I hope you guys will support that when it comes out. And as Dylan's taking a swig of coffee, and it's even off camera. So we just drink coffee because, not just because we're looking at selling that brand. But anyways, I hope that makes sense with these chestnuts, acorns, and apples. Great addition to your food plots. Great addition to your land. I'm never saying not to plant them. But bottom line, they are not the end-all, be-all for best deer food. There's a lot more to it. And if anyone's telling you different, they're selling you short. And make sure where you're buying these that they're appropriate for your area and the timing that you need on your land for this fall. Folks, I want to make sure you check out my web class video series, whether it's how to design your food plot program or how to design your property in general. And we have a new one coming out that'll be how to hunt the rut. But these bucks back here are a testament. Some of these bucks go back to 93. They're even in different states. I urge you to check out those web classes that you can help yourself, help your land, help your hunt. The link is in the description. And also for those that have tried them out, I encourage you to offer some feedback in the comments below. Thank you.